basically, statement 22, 23, 24 of chapter 5 is basically elaborating on statement 21 of chapter 5. Statement 21 says, in secret mantra, discipline is indispensable. So there, the word discipline is actually referring to more broadly to disciplined conduct. Then more specifically is referring to the disciplined conduct that is found in the individual liberation vows, the foundational level of the three vows, being the individual liberation vows, being the basic foundation upon which we build our bodhisattva aspirations, our bodhisattva training, upon which then the secret mantra is practiced. So here it's saying that, contrary to how some people think about this, or how some people understand this matter, there is no, it contradicts the basic teachings of the Buddha to say that things that the Buddha taught and identified to be harmful, to be causes of suffering, that he identified in the context of the foundational level of the individual liberation vows. It cannot be that some point further down the path they are considered to be virtuous. So there, in 22nd, more specifically, it says, so for example, if desire and attachment, which the Buddha already identified as obstacles, is what keeps us stuck and trapped in confusion. So then, Buddha first taught this when he first started teaching to the world, which is mostly teaching those teachings that we now consider to be individual liberation vows, teachings and practices related to that. So if already their desire, attachment have been identified as obstacles, it cannot be the case that then now, when you practice secret mantra, the Buddha says, oh, now it's no longer an obstacle. It's not like that. If it seems like that, it's because we don't understand what is going on. Which is that in secret mantra, it's not that desire is now no longer causing an obstacle, but rather desire is, you relate to desire when you get to the level of practicing according to secret mantra. You relate to desire, you work with desire in a different way. Desire continues to be an obstacle, but how you work with desire changes. Whether it's on the individual liberation vow level of training, or bodhisattva vow level of training, or secret mantra vow level of training. Yeah, so then things are like, alcohol is harmful when it causes intoxication, and then continued use of alcohol causes dependency and addiction, right? It's not saying that, oh, this is only alcohol, only does things like that when you are at the individual liberation vows level. It doesn't matter if you're in bodhisattva vow, if you're in secret mantra vow level of training. Again, how you deal with this harmful habit changes as you become more refined more capable in handling these obstacles. So 22, 23, 24 is elaborating on this key point of the indispensable nature of disciplined conduct. So now 25, it says the result of purifying, of clearing the mental defilements, the mental afflictions, is the state of a Sugata, is the state of a Buddha. So let's look at 25, Khenpo Kunpal's commentary. Thus, when one has been ripened through empowerment, the life force of the empowerment is the pledges, the samayas. That's the life force. So that's what gives, continues to make the empowerment you have received effective and powerful, is by keeping the samayas. So the life force of the empowerment is the pledges that keep the mind stream in place with what should be practiced and what should be abandoned in the three sets of vows, the three levels of training. And these should be protected like one's own life. Then the result of purifying or removing all the adventitious stains, the 5 mental afflictions and so forth, their seeds and their propensities, through the 2 liberating stages. So here it's explained as identify what are these 2 liberating stages, is the creation and the completion stages. So through the 2 liberating stages is the state of the 3 kayas, or the 5 families of the Sugatas, of the Buddhas. It is said in the Thorough Union Tantra, by meditating on the complete purity of ignorance, complete as in total purity of ignorance, one will become Vairochana. By cultivating the complete purity, total purity of aversion, you will become Akshobhya. By cultivating the total purity of desire, you will become Amitabha. By cultivating the total purity of jealousy, you will become the mighty Amughasiddhi. By cultivating the total purity of pride, you will become Ranasambhava. Thus, purity, cultivating, and will become here mean that the actual mental defilements that are not handled skillfully are not considered to be the kayas, wisdoms, and path. Instead, these afflictions are considered to obscure. Therefore, Jigten Sumgon maintains that one must purify them through the path, one must clear them through the path, and then the kayas and wisdoms will manifest. This is, I believe this is a subtle point. The obvious statement, and the statement it seems to say something that is quite obvious. What is the result of purifying these stains, these mental defilements? Well, it's the state of Buddha. So what is going on here is related to how some people understand the implications of what Mahamudra says, or what the Dzogchen tradition says. You'll find certain like Mahamudra or Dzogchen texts, practices, traditions, and you even find it in the Chan or Zen tradition. Sometimes this idea that since the mind is primordially pure and pristine, since Buddha nature has always been pure and pristine, then the mental defilements that are only temporarily existing don't matter. Don't matter not only in the sense of don't let them matter you, don't let them disturb you, but also don't matter. They take it even further than that by saying, oh, it's fine if they're there. Because after all, right, their nature and the nature of wisdom is the same. So it's fine that they are there. Here Kyobpa Rinpoche is saying, no, 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 no. It's not fine that they are there. Because if they are still there, then that is why you are you, and Buddha Shakyamuni is Buddha Shakyamuni. In terms of the nature of Buddha Shakyamuni, your nature, then there is no. Yeah? Instead of your, in the sense of, insofar as your nature is concerned and Buddha Shakyamuni's nature is concerned, no difference. But Buddha Shakyamuni's state is completely different from our state, because Buddha Shakyamuni has completely removed all the adventitious, all the temporary mental defilements. And these mental defilements, not only they have been removed, but their bases have been removed, have been cleared, so that these mental defilements would never arise again for Buddha Shakyamuni. For us, they continue to appear. And so we have to clear these mental defilements, these afflictive emotions. So clearing them is what the path is about. So if you use the language of ground, path, and fruition, then ground, equally, we are Buddhas, Buddha Shakyamuni, and all the other Buddhas that we call Buddhas now, Amitabha, Kashyapa, Amoghasiddhi, whatever. Yes, on the ground, we are Buddhas, they are Buddhas. But right now, are you and I experiencing this from the state of a Buddha? Experiencing this? No. Why? Because of the presence of these temporary adventitious stains, obscurations. So then the path is none other than the process of clearing all these defilements. And then when this is cleared, the result, the fruition, is also different from us right now. That result is complete and perfect Buddhas. So this is what statement 25. It says, thus purity, meditation, and will become here mean that the actual mental defilements that are not handled skillfully, they are not the kayas, the wisdoms, and the path. Instead, these are obscurations. Therefore, Jigten Sumgon maintains that one must clear them by the process, by the path. Then the kayas and the wisdoms will manifest without anything obscuring them. And so in the famous Fivefold Mahamudra song that Jigten Sumgon composed, he says that if we don't clear the mass of thoughts from the sky of the Dharmakaya, then the sun and the moon will not shine. Or if we want to be more astronomically correct, we would say sun and moon is always shining, but the presence of clouds in between us and the sun and moon makes the always shining sun and moon maybe sun and the other stars, if you want to be astronomically correct. And then the suns, the stars, the light will not shine, in the sense that we are, between us and the stars are these clouds, and these clouds are clouding clouding where we are standing. 526 takes us to a situation that when you first read it, you go, what? They have to say, he has to say this? Yes. And what is 526? The powers are merely demonstrated. Violent activities are not permitted. What are you talking about here? We're talking about, again, certain ways in which people understand how violence, how wrathfulness is used, is handled in Vajrayana practice. So here, Kyobpa Rinpoche says, violence, the actual use of violence is never permitted, so to say, never prescribed by the Buddha. However, there is a show sometimes Buddhas show overwhelming power to intimidate, so to say, the demons. In other words, less mythological, there are times when we are practicing and working with the secret mantra way, where we can demonstrate powers, so to say, in order to terrify our afflictive emotions. But there is no occasion where we can go beyond demonstrating great power to actually using violence to harm others. And this had to be said because in the context of 12th century Tibet especially, there were all kinds of like ritual attempts at ritual murder. Yeah? We don't know how literal it was going on. But we do know that there were no like human sacrifices by ritual murder. I don't mean that. But that using like certain representations, to like then cut certain representations of a certain persons and then using like quote unquote wrathful rituals to cut, that person apart and hurl them into the river, things like that. So here, Kyobpa Rinpoche says, don't misunderstand and pervert the Buddha's teachings by, first of all, without proper guidance, open up, a tantra text, and then you come across these recommendations, you should make an effigy and you should cut up the effigy, you should chop it all up and throw it to the dogs, then you think, oh, in Vajrayana we can do this. No. So if in the earlier Vajra statement, Kyobpa Rinpoche is saying how desire and attachment cannot be used. Desire and attachment is an obstacle no matter what level you're practicing. Likewise now, hatred and anger and violence is never prescribed. Never permitted in the language that they're using in this translation. I prefer prescribed. It was never prescribed by the Buddha, as in, this is what you should do. No. The language of permitted and prohibited, in a way, kind of close to the Tibetan, but it doesn't convey for us, especially those of us with theistic backgrounds, in your upbringing, is you have to be very careful with words like permitted and prohibited, because lurking in the back of your mind is a God that permits and a God, and the same God that permits certain things, prohibits certain things. And so if you relate to the Dharmas, kind of like teaching us, this you should do, This you should not do if you relate to them as in a theistic way, and that this is what God demands of you. And if you are going to be blessed, if you are going to do well in life, you have to be obedient to God's will. And God's will, in a way, can change anytime. So something that God now says is good can turn bad later when God changes his mind. Sort of like the story of God asking Abraham to sacrifice his son to God, right? So if we were to analyze that story from the Buddha's point of view, then the Buddha would say, no, even God cannot change karmic causality like that. To ask someone to murder someone else for whatever reason is always negative. So if we look at the commentary here, when it is said about redemption, so redemption here is a specific Vajrayana term for liberation through killing. It means to kill a sentient being while sending this being's consciousness to a pure realm. So it's related to Powa. But they're like, oh, this person is going to do something very negative. And what he or she is going to do is going to cause a lot of suffering. So we should use this ritual killing and send their consciousness to the pure realm, to the pure land. So here, when it is said about redemption, the Vajrayana's profound view and conduct is like this. The greatness of the powers and strength is merely demonstrated, but forceful, violent activities of freely killing others is not permitted. It is not something that the Buddha can permit in the first place, much less would he permit. Is that the simple fact is that, he would never prescribe or permit the use of force and violence. It is said in the Manjushri Root Tantra, the supremely compassionate Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas with great miraculous powers show all their activities to demonstrate the power of the mantras. Unquote. So in other words, they're not showing it to cause violence, to violate others. But you could say this is like a show of force, but never actually using that force. When redemption has first fallen under a motivation of aggression, the main part and the conclusion of the action will be likewise. The result also is that one will surely go to the hell realms. Therefore, one should not do it. It is told in the Manjushri Root Tantra how the Brahmin called Chanakya had attained stability in the deity's generation stage or creation stage practice of the exalted deity Yamantaka, the slayer of Yama, the slayer of death, a very wrathful deity, said to be the wrathful manifestation of Manjushri. And then merely by his way of looking, he did forceful, violent activities such as summoning, paralyzing, and expelling enemies. He thus was reborn in hell. When it is taught like that, there is no need to mention that one will go to hell if one engages in forceful, violent activities through the worldly gods that are actually violent. And so in Tibetan society, there is an acute understanding that there are these entities, these worldly spirit beings who are actually violent, and they will pretend to be this or that Buddha and try to trick you into following in their violent ways. In addition, when the glorious Naropa performed violent activities of black magic against enemies, 2 wisdom dakinis came and scolded him, "Don't do such negative acts." And he had to give them up. When it happens like this for Naropa, there's no need to mention that it is the same case for others. So even Naropa, such a great Mahasiddha, when he tried to use these violent activities of magic against enemies, it says that 2 Dakinis turned up to warn and to scold him. Thus it is said in the Tantra of Yamantaka Merutse, apart from redeeming the mental afflictions with the compassion of clear self-cognizance, if one redeems with an aggressive, malevolent mind, one will be reborn in the hell of ceaseless torment. Avicii. Rigzin Chodra said, those who nowadays kill others with poor, incomplete, and malevolent mantras while pretending to be mantrayana practitioners will have as their future a dwelling place called the pleasant realm of the Vajra needle tip. This is the Vajra hell. Thus, what one needs to redeem and abandon is also to like it if someone says you have great powers, and not like it if someone says you have no vows. One needs to abandon the dualistic grasping at I and you, attachment and aversion towards friends and enemies respectively, and the 8 worldly concerns. Well, why is it said in the Vajrayana that violent activities are needed? This means that the object of redemption must be someone with the 10 areas of transgression complete, and not merely an enemy who steals, robs, and so forth, while being a manifestation of the ripened karmic retribution of your own bad actions. Moreover, if that person does not listen, no matter how much one tries to trick him through various skillful, compassionate means, and if one cannot turn him away from his bad actions, only then one should redeem him through the power of violent activities. Furthermore, the one who performs the redemption has to be a yogi who does not think about his own wishes whatsoever and only kills through great compassion while being surely able to revive that person. What it means here is you do not do these rituals, even if they are just symbolic rituals of liberating, code word for killing this or that enemy, including you think, oh, they are enemies of the Dharma. You say, you have no ability to execute such a violent action and not create the negative karma and suffer that negative karma. He says, unless, here it's almost in passing, you are surely able to revive the person. So it says in the Vajrakilaya, which is a wrathful deity practice, it says, you cannot liberate anyone. You cannot go and liberate, code word, kill anyone and say, oh, I have transferred them to Amitabha's Pure Land. He says, you can only liberate someone if you also have the power to not only separate their mind from their body, but to also bring their mind and plant it back in their body and they get back up. In other words, if you don't have the power to resurrect someone, then you cannot separate their minds from their body. In other words, you cannot kill unless you have the power to call them back, to revive. What is the way to do the redemption? First, one must redeem the demon that clings to enemies and friends, that is the great adversarial ego clinging, through the authentic view. When one has redeemed oneself through realization, one can interrupt another person's bad actions through violent activities of perfected skillful means and redeem them through compassion and the certainty that one is able to send their consciousness up to the realm of Akanishta, the highest realm within confused existence. A twofold benefit will be spontaneously accomplished, and this is said to be the domain of those who are like the great lords of accomplished masters of India and the Mahasiddhas. It is said in the Tantra, first, one should redeem oneself through realization and habituation. It is said in the Vajrakilaya Root Tantra, the pledge of redeeming through compassion is not to kill and suppress. Instead, one visualizes the body of the person to be the nature of Vajra and the mind as a Vajra. So when you begin to experience, when you begin to cultivate successfully the view that others are the nature of Vajra, both their appearance and their essence, which is mind, both body and mind, are, Vajra, indestructible, are deities, are empty. That is how you, quote unquote, kill. Yeah. I don't know why they use the word redemption. That's such a, sorry, I have to say, it's such a terrible choice for Drowa. Because redemption has such a, in my mind, I think has such a Christian connotation there. Redemption. I have no idea why this choice was made. Give me 1 second. I have one suspicion, but I want to take a quick look. Drowa usually is translated, which is what here is translated as redemption. Drowa usually is translated as to liberate, to free, to release. Yeah, to free, to release, to deliver, to liberate, to take across. So I have no idea where the heck redemption comes from. So please scratch out the word redemption. When it is said about liberation, or to carry across, to take across, yeah, anyway. The pledge of liberating through compassion is not to kill or to suppress, but it is to successfully experience, relate to others as deities. And in that way, right, the confused existence of others has been liberated. So this is 526. So today we are going to stop here.